get started with, this is something I'm incredibly passionate about. John, you've attended one of my classes, you know that I'm always talking about the system. And what I'm trying to achieve with this is to help you understand one of the key concepts of anything about a system. We're going to define what a system is and which system we're talking about. But it's about having a mindset of constantly trying to redesign the system, always trying to improve and move forward. One of the clients I'm working with right now, I just got off a conversation with them before this webinar, is they're struggling with this exact thing. Is people are comfortable with where we are today. And well, we don't want to upset the apple cart. The analogy I gave is we're walking down that balance beam, and when we start talking about improving the system, they think, I'm already carrying so many plates, balancing on this very precarious, narrow point, and you want me to take on more. And that is the challenge, but that's not actually what we're asking for. And that's a really good point, is the conversation on today is about understanding what a system is very briefly. Which system are we talking about? There's two key ones that we'll call those out. And then mostly, how do we start to improve that? How do we get on this cycle, this relentless improvement approach where we're always moving forward? Now, here's the challenge. When I was creating the material for this, and I've been studying systems thinking, helping people improve systems for over 20 years now. And when I started pulling the material together, I have two very trusted colleagues that helped me out a great deal with this, John Miller and Dan Leahy, both involved with Scaled Agile. John is a fellow SPCT, Dan is an SPC. And my reference to them was, okay, I have the material. It's about a 15-hour webinar. Well, obviously we can't do that. So what I've done is taken the overview, the concepts around system design or system redesign. How do we get started on that? What is the approach? And then I have 4 key components, I call them design 4 components that we're going to discuss. Time permitting, we might get into another one or two. And the idea is then afterwards, we're going to start producing a series with smaller vignettes on each of the remaining design 4 concepts. So you're going to see 4 of the key ones, and it was a tough choice of which one to choose for. If you're familiar with design thinking is an iterative approach that helps us understand the problem, define the problem, and then move into, so this is a design thinking approach, is first researching, understanding, that's where divergent thinking starts, and then defining the problem, that's where convergent thinking comes in, where we make decisions from it. And so now we've discovered what we think the problem might be, and then we start to develop a solution for it. Now, this is a very common lean agile product management approach. We applied this to design thinking for system redesign. And here's what I came up with. Is the problem we're facing is people are having these statements. It takes so long to deliver this. When can we deliver? I don't like working here. All the different issues that you hear that are going on within our systems today, the struggles that we're having, the concerns we have. Well, as I started to work through this, realize that over the years, working through helping people improve the system that they're working in, we've started to define a problem. We need a new system. And people look at that and say, well, how do you get a new system? That's what the conversation is all about. Now, over the years, we've developed a number of key components to redefining the system. We're going to talk about 3 of those key components. Defining what a system is so that we're on the same page, and then answer the question, why do we redesign? And then, like I said, I want to kick off the design 4 concepts. And what I mean by design for variability, design for feedback loops, design for the components you want to have into a system design. I cannot tell you which one is most important to you first. It depends on where your organization is at. But as you go through and see some of those design 4s, hopefully you will see, yeah, that's the one. That's the one that will help us the most right now. So then once we have that, now we start to come up with, well, what's the solution? Well, now we know that we can continue that design 4. And again, I'm planning on doing about 4 of those. We'll see how time permits. but there will be many more after that. There will be a lot of those iterative videos coming out that will build on the concepts we're talking about today and continue that forward into the design for approaches. So that being said, let's talk about what's next. So first, we want to define the enterprise system. And that's where I'm going to give you the two different concepts of what a system is. And then we'll focus on why redesign. Why should you be focused on that? What's the importance? What's the bang for the buck? What's the outcome, the value? And then we'll start in on some of the design for keys. I want to talk about systems thinking. A lot of people misunderstand systems thinking, think it's this whole theoretical, esoteric, high-level thing that really doesn't affect us. We live in systems every day. Our home is a system, our work is a system, how we drive to work, how we order food, all of those things are systems. They're all around us. The key here to systems thinking, though, that really is for today, is first of all, to understand the full system. Sean mentioned my road racing, that I tend to apply a lot of what I learned from road racing into my enterprise coaching and vice versa. They're both systems. Going down on the racetrack is a system, is working with the machine, with my own inputs to it, how the track is responding, the other racers, all those things. You need to see the whole system, but you're going to optimize locally. You're going to improve incremental things, tweak one step at a time, but you're doing that while watching the entire system. That's the key, is you need to watch the whole system. And then you need to watch for those feedback loops. We're going to talk, one of the design fours we're covering is design for feedback loops. They are so critical. And one of the things I see most often that is the visibility is missing is, where are the feedback loops? And the reality is, feedback loops already exist. People think, well, we need to create them. Usually you just need to nurture them. You need to expose them. You need to make them visible. You need to receive the data from them. The feedback loops are almost always already there. We're going to talk about some things about control systems that applies to feedback loops, and how you need to do something called magnify the receptors. And I'll explain what that means, but it's essentially enabling yourself to gather that feedback. And here's what happens in a system. Feedback is telling you the gap between what's happening, current system, and what we really want, where we need redesign. And some of the books I'm going to recommend from a reading perspective that I've done a lot of research with, they are constantly stressing the fact that looking at the feedback loops and then taking action. And that's a critical component of this. So a system, what is a system? We brought that topic up. It's literally a set of interconnected elements, these steps that we go through. It's inputs and outputs. Every system has inputs and outputs, both at the beginning and from state to state, and feedback loops. Those components working together achieve a specific purpose or function. And again, it could be ordering food, it could be delivering value, it could be a number of different things. Those are the commonalities of a system. Now, there's two different core systems we typically work with. A solution system, the products you build, the combination of front ends, APIs, back ends, cloud capabilities, and so forth. That package that you put together from a software perspective, it could be hardware, software working together, it could be process flows. It's the products that you're delivering. That's your solution system. But we use a system to deliver that value. So the steps, the practices, the culture, the bureaucracy, the approach, the handoffs, all of those things, that is what we call your enterprise system. And that's what this conversation is about. We're going to talk about the enterprise system, that set of steps and approach that we use to deliver value. A lot of people understand how their product flows, their product system operates, works together. Very few people have taken the time to visualize what does their enterprise system look like. By the way, I want to pause here and share something. Questions and things, I want to bring us back to that. If you have questions, please throw them on the chat. Sean, feel free, if there's a question that you think is very contextual, just toss it in, just interrupt, and we'll cover the question there. If not, we can capture questions and cover those towards the end of the webinar. Okay? So I'll leave that up to you on contextual or not. Now, One of the critical things when we're talking about the enterprise system is, what do you design for? We need to design for tomorrow, not today. I see a lot of people that look at their system and say, well, we can tweak this, we can make this a little better. Okay, that's a start, but you really need to think about, what do you want to design today for tomorrow, not for today. What I've always coached clients to do is build the system you need tomorrow and deal with the exceptions today. If you focus too much on what you need today, you will build a system that inhibits your growth, will keep you to where you are today. If you build a system for what you need tomorrow, it's going to lead you there. You're going to be heading that way, sometimes kicking and screaming, to moving towards that. And it's very similar if you're familiar with the horizon, investment horizon concept, where most of our companies have the bulk of our investment in what we call Horizon 1, those main products that create probably 90-95% or more of your revenue. But companies that are looking to the future are creating their H2 and H3. They're prototyping. We've got some products out there early. These might turn out to be something, all the way to those early high-level prototypes and innovation experiments and so forth. You need to have that applied to your system as well, your enterprise system. Design for what you want tomorrow, but make sure it's not just that H1 investment horizon. It includes H2 and H3 as well. Now, one of the keys to a system that a lot of companies struggle with is they don't have a vision. They don't understand what they really want. And it's hard to design for tomorrow if you don't have a vision you want. And I like to use very illustrative visions. In fact, let's take a look at this picture. This looks really comfortable, right? Boy, it'd be really relaxing to be there. That might be the equivalent of your first vision of your enterprise system. How do we collaborate in the future? How do we work together? How do we hold each other accountable? What's the level of trust? What's the culture look like? But as we're building it and moving forward and iterating on that system and redesigning it, that vision might change. It might go from that comfortable cabin on the riverbank to a nice beachfront property. And that's okay. That happens quite often. As long as you have that clear picture of what you want your enterprise system to be, and everyone shares in it, it can morph. In fact, it should morph. It should adjust. Now, a couple things, and I really have to thank my friends John and Dan I mentioned earlier for helping with this, but you need to have a strategy. What kind of system do you need? And some of the examples we came up with is, maybe you need a low cost. Your focus is on removing waste. We have far too much waste in our system. What we do doesn't require that much innovation, but boy, there's a lot of cost there. Maybe that's the focus you have. Perhaps it's building the right product. We're in a very intense market where we have to deliver the right thing as early as possible. It might be a focus on accuracy. Maybe it's speed. Maybe that type of market that you have is much more for, it's really moving fast. People are learning as we go. We're not sure what kind of product we actually need. This is really intended more for those fast learning systems. We have to learn as quickly as possible. And by the way, the accuracy focus has a lot of that fast learning as well. Maybe it's high performance. You might be in a really high risk environment. Perhaps you're building satellite systems, you're building something for SpaceX to help them get to the moon in 2 years type of thing. It might be where you have that high performance focus. You're going to design your system a little bit different. Now, our next step is, we've talked about what is an enterprise system. Why would you redesign it? What's the reason for it? And here is the key thing that I have seen over the years is too many people saying, throw your hands in the air, system's broken. There's nothing we can do about it. And what I've found that does is it removes accountability. I can't do anything about it. I can't be held accountable because I can't change it. The system is what it is. Here's the problem with that. Don't blame the system. Even W. Edwards Deming, for all his wisdom, really said that it's the system, the process, rather than the employee. Yeah, but we have to be careful. It's not a broken system. It's a system that needs to be redesigned. Every system is working exactly how it was designed. That's the reality. The problem is a lot of times that design was very haphazard. It was without a purpose. Maybe we didn't even know we were designing the system when we did it. And that's where we end up with those systems that aren't creating the type of outcome we want. I want to end the poll here and just see our results. It looks like we have quite everyone, or there's several people that are focused on improving it. A couple of people are not sure. Let me share the results with you, actually. Accuracy is a big one. Yes, that's a critical one, especially in the type of climate we're in today. What I see very often is accuracy and speed focus within the system is kind of a no-brainer. It's a really good starting point. When you create that vision for the enterprise system you want, including one or more of those components is really important, especially accuracy. And we have the tools and techniques to do that. We'll talk about some of those, but we have the tools and techniques to do that now. There is no reason for not having that clear cut, here's the type of system we want, and let's go towards it. Now, why should we redesign a system? Here's a couple key points to that. Any system that's not improving is degrading. There's no steady state. It doesn't exist. I grabbed this quote about software decay. People think, hey, we wrote that code a while ago. It works just great. No, anything that doesn't constantly get improvement is degrading. There's no stasis. There's no steady state approach. You have to keep moving it forward. And when we dive deeper into that, you can't improve value delivery without systemic improvements through redesign. We're all constantly trying to improve the products we deliver, either faster, cheaper, more accurate, better, higher quality, whatever it might be. We're always trying to improve that, and yet very seldom are we trying to improve the system that builds that. If you're familiar with Conway's Law basically says good luck with that, because your organization that you work within, you are constrained to building systems that mirror that organizational structure, that system. You have to keep moving it forward. Another great quote from Deming when he said, a system must be managed. It will not manage itself. If you leave those components alone, they're going to independently become those selfish, independent profit centers, and that destroys the overall system. You've got to focus on the whole system, and it has to be about improving it. All right, that being said, I want to move forward into some of the design for keys. This is where I want to spend the bulk of our conversation. And in advertising, marketing this webinar, we talked about the Wiring the Winning Organization. One of their key concepts is slowification. If you haven't read this book, really powerful book. Gene Kim and Steven Spear. There's another book I'm going to recommend from Steven Spear that really helped influence my efforts as well as this webinar. But they talk about three key concepts. Slowification, which is essentially making problem solving easier. Slowing down. I'm going to show you one of the design for the pause. Putting a pause state in where you can step back and learn from it. Simplification. If we can simplify through a number of them, they talk about three key concepts, decoupling and so forth. Having that approach to being able to simplify the system, at least the component we're trying to improve, now it makes it easier to solve. And then amplification. That ties into a lot of the feedback loops and the ability to see what's really going on. It is next to impossible, probably impossible, to improve a system without feedback loops. You need to measure, you need to listen, you need to observe. One of the references they talk about in Wiring the Winning Organization is the Top Gun analogy. And they bring up the fact that in the Vietnam War, the US fighter pilots, there was a 2-to-1 kill ratio. They were really struggling. In fact, they said in 1 month they lost 17 pilots. That's not going to work. And that's when they established Top Gun. And one of the keys about Top Gun is building in the slowification, where they could have pause states in the middle of very critical, dangerous drills. They're out flying the airplanes and trying different exercises and drills. And at any point they could pause and say, stop, fly in formation. Let's figure this out. Let's stop right here and improve it before someone gets hurt. That's an example of slowification. It's about saying, hold on a second, we need to pause because any further exercise, effort, any further production is just going to make the problem worse. And that slowification, they said we made up this term. I think it's a great word because it's slowing it down. Now, Captain David Marquet talked about this as well. If you're not familiar, Captain Marquet is famous for his greatness video where he talks about decentralization on a U.S. Navy submarine. His other book, or another book he has, is called Leadership is Language. And he brings up a concept called blue work versus red work. That's a really powerful concept. Red work is our production. And that is if you're building processes, building software, if you are building hardware, product, whatever it might be, that's the red work. You're producing, delivering. You're using the system you've already built and using the problem avoidance, the issue avoidance that's already built into the system to deliver that value. But you need to have that pause state. You need to step back and have what he calls blue work. And blue work is the thinking, the changing. It's slowification. It's stepping back and saying, hold on a second, let's look at this. We need to improve the system now before we continue to use the system. And that's where you get to the balance point. You cannot improve the system if you're not operating it. You need red work to operate it. You need to be developing, delivering, solving customer problems, and so forth. But then you learn from that red work and take it into the blue work time, into the slowification. And that's where you start to improve the system. Without both of those states in place, you just don't have any opportunity to improve. And Marquet talks a lot about the adjustability, creating this, he calls it bias for action. Building in this pause state that doesn't break momentum, doesn't slow us down, but allows us to continue to accelerate and move forward.